Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're now delighted to be joined over the telephone by our guest for the afternoon, Mr. Ramzy Khoury, our Jordanian journalist. It's a very good afternoon to you, Mr. Ramzy. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Ramzy. It's always a pleasure to have you with us on Arab Affairs. And of course, to wrap up the recent developments with regards to the situation in the Gaza Strip, Palestinian medical sources said 22 Palestinians were killed in Israeli raids early this morning, and overnight at least another 40 Palestinians also died in Israeli occupation military strikes. And somehow this comes, as efforts are still underway to revive Gaza ceasefire talks. And some officials from the Palestinian group Hamas are even heading to Cairo now for a new round of talks. How do you see the recent developments on the ground and the escalation in attacks and the number of martyrs?
Well, Israel hasn't stopped its massacres on a daily basis that has been going on. However, what is new on the ground is that they are using new weapons that are vaporizing bodies. And this is new. It's a new technology that nobody has seen before. So the Palestinians are now demanding that these weapons are investigated. They have found many bodies that have been vaporized rather than shot or injured through bombardment. So this is something that is new that is happening on the ground. Israel is testing new weapons. And some of these weapons seem to be extremely advanced, very different from what people have seen before. As for the Egyptian effort to try to get a ceasefire done before Trump gets into power, which is apparently what Trump wants. Apparently Trump has voiced that he would like to see a ceasefire in Gaza before he actually has.
Yes, Mr. Ramzy, are you with us? Hello? Right, apologies, we seem to have lost the connection with Mr. Ramzy. Short break and we're back, hopefully with him back on the line. Stay tuned. Welcome back again. We're delighted to be joined over the telephone by Mr. Ramzy Khoury, our journalist and our guest for the afternoon. Mr. Ramzy, once again, welcome back. And you were just talking about the efforts to revive the Gaza ceasefire talks with officials from the Palestinian group headed to Cairo. All this before Donald Trump's, official inauguration back as president of the U.S. in the White House. How important do you see this? And you also said that this is something Trump apparently is calling for as well.
Absolutely. It is extremely important, especially for the Palestinians who are getting massacred on a daily basis.
Yes.
The huge effort that Egypt is putting right now to get this deal going is a very big effort that is designed to reach a ceasefire that can actually sustain. The big question is, how much does Netanyahu exaggerate when he comes out and tells his people that the reason why he decided to go for a ceasefire in Lebanon is because of lack of ammunition and lack of military parts. So basically what the message that he gave to his own people is that Israel or the Israeli army was incapable of continuing the war in Lebanon, and therefore they opted for a ceasefire. If that is serious, and it's not an exaggeration or an attempt to put pressure on the Americans to give more and more, the Americans have already given Israel more than $16 billion in military aid. But if this is the case, then maybe this would also be an opportunity to put pressure on Israel to do a ceasefire in Gaza, because Gaza is costing Israel people as well as equipment.
Indeed, Mr. Ramzy. Also, the Israeli military Saturday said it had also struck military infrastructure at the Syrian-Lebanon border being used by Hezbollah for weapons smuggling in what they said is a violation of their ceasefire agreement. How do you see this, especially now the Israeli military, calling on Lebanese residents, or rather prohibiting them from moving south to several villages and ordering them not even to return to 62 villages in the area?
Israel is breaking the ceasefire dozens of times a day.
Yes.
And they haven't stopped. They haven't stopped since the ceasefire took hold. Immediately, they started breaking it. What is surprising is how Hezbollah is actually trying to adhere by it and to play low. Even the speech that was made by the leader, Naim Qasim, Hezbollah's leader, was very mellow and very low, and he declared victory despite the fact that the Israeli military is still holding a major part of the south of Lebanon. And the Israeli military has not left Lebanon. The Israeli military continued attacking Hezbollah targets, but also prohibiting civilians from going back home, like you said. And therefore, to see Hezbollah playing low is very interesting. It should be noted. It is obvious that Hezbollah is trying to get this ceasefire to go on. It's a very, very hushed ceasefire. It's a ceasefire that can actually break at any time, and Israel can go back to war, and Israel is promising somehow to go back to war all the time. As for the border points that Israel has been attacking for the past year.
Yes.
Even before the invasion of Lebanon and before the last episode started, Israel was attacking all of the routes between Lebanon and Syria, claiming that these are the routes that Hezbollah uses to smuggle weapons. But everybody knows that the Lebanese-Syrian borders are very big.
Absolutely.
And all of these points that are being attacked are official border lines. And Hezbollah does not need to smuggle weapons through these border lines. Hezbollah can smuggle weapons through the very vast borders between Lebanon and Syria, if that is the case.
Right.
And of course we have to take into account what's going on in Syria right now with the Free Syrian Army.
Absolutely. Right, I'm afraid I've run out of time, but I'd like to thank you very, very much, Mr. Ramzy Khoury, our journalist and our guest for the afternoon. And just before we wrap up today's edition of Arab Affairs, we go to the latest situation with the Israeli military saying it had struck military infrastructure on the Syrian-Lebanon border being used by Hezbollah for weapons smuggling in violation of their ceasefire agreement. More details to follow. The Israeli military said on Saturday it had struck military infrastructure at the Syrian-Lebanon border being used by Hezbollah for weapons smuggling in violation of their ceasefire agreement. Earlier, the Israeli military said Saturday that Lebanese residents were prohibited from moving south to several villages and called on them not to return to around 62 villages in the area. Meanwhile, the head of Hezbollah, Naim Qasim, pledged on Friday to coordinate closely with the Lebanese army to implement a ceasefire deal with Israel, which he said his group had agreed to with heads held high. It was his first address since the ceasefire came into effect on Wednesday, after more than a year of hostilities between Hezbollah and Israel that decimated swaths of Lebanon and killed 4,000 people, including hundreds of women and children. Qasim said Hezbollah had approved the deal with resistance strong in the battlefield and their heads held high with their right to defend themselves. The ceasefire stipulates that Hezbollah will withdraw from areas south of the Litani River, which runs around 30 kilometers north of the border with Israel, and that the Lebanese army will deploy troops there as Israeli ground troops withdraw. Security sources and officials have said that Lebanese army has already sent additional troops to the south, but is preparing a detailed deployment plan to share with Lebanon's cabinet. The effort has been complicated by the continuing presence of Israeli troops on Lebanese territory. The deal grants them a full 60 days to complete their withdrawal. Israeli military has issued restrictions on people returning to villages along Lebanon's border with Israel and has fired at people in those villages in recent days, calling those movements a violation of the truce. Both the Lebanese army and Hezbollah have been accused Israel of breaching the ceasefire in those instances and by launching an airstrike above the river on Thursday.